Captain Vex-9 clicked her mandibles in what humans might call amusement, though the sound resembled more of a rusty gate opening than actual laughter. Standing over the excavation site on Terra 7, she watched her archaeological team carefully brush dirt from what appeared to be another worthless human artifact. "Another helmet, Captain," announced Dr. Krill, holding up the dented piece of metal with two of his forearms. "Typical human construction. Primitive alloys, basic design. Probably belonged to some foot soldier who died screaming." Vex-9's compound eyes shifted focus. "How delightfully morbid of you, Doctor. Though I suppose that is why the High Council pays you to dig through ancient battlefields instead of doing something useful." The helmet was indeed unremarkable. Standard-issue military gear from the Great War of 2087, when humanity had made their laughably desperate last stand against the hegemony. Vex-9 remembered reading the battle reports as a cadet. Humans, outnumbered 50 to 1, had somehow managed to hold the line for 3 entire rotations before being overwhelmed. Impressive for such a short-lived species, she admitted grudgingly. "Wait," Dr. Krill's antennae twitched with sudden interest. "There is something inside." He reached into the helmet's interior and withdrew a small, flat device. The human writing on it was faded but still legible through his translation implant. His body went rigid, all 4 arms freezing in place. "What does it say?" Vex-9 asked, though she was already dreading the answer. Nothing good ever came from human artifacts that made Dr. Krill look like he had seen a ghost. "Find me. I am alive. Sergeant Marcus Vale, service number 7749 Alpha. If you can read this, the war is over. Find me." The silence that followed was broken only by the wind whistling through the ruins of what had once been New Melbourne. Vex-9's mandibles stopped clicking entirely. In over 2 centuries of archaeological work, she had never encountered anything quite this unsettling. "Impossible," she muttered. "The battle ended 97 years ago. Every human on this planet was confirmed dead. We have the reports." Dr. Krill turned the device over in his hands, studying the crude human electronics. "The message appears authentic, Captain. Pre-war human technology, consistent with the time period. But you are correct, of course. No human could survive nearly a century on this dead rock." "Of course I am correct," Vex-9 snapped, though something cold was crawling up her spine. "Humans live, what, 80 years maximum? This Marcus Vale, assuming he even existed, would be dust by now." She snatched the device from Dr. Krill's hands and studied it herself. The human script was simple, direct, no flourishes or elaborate declarations, just a name, a number, and an impossible claim. It was exactly the sort of thing a dying human might leave behind as a final act of defiance. "Sir," one of the junior excavators called from across the dig site, "you need to see this." Vex-9 groaned. "Let me guess. More human nonsense?" The young archaeologist, Zik-12, was standing next to what appeared to be a freshly disturbed patch of ground. Not freshly disturbed as in recent excavation work, but freshly disturbed as in something had crawled out of it from underneath. "The soil displacement patterns are unusual," Zik-12 said carefully, "almost as if something emerged from below within the last few rotations." "Something emerged," Vex-9 repeated slowly, "from underground. After 97 years. Yes, sir." Vex-9 looked at the helmet in her hands, then at the disturbed earth, then back at the helmet. The logical part of her mind, the part trained in proper scientific methodology, insisted this was simply an elaborate hoax. Perhaps the human military had planted false evidence to waste hegemony resources. It would be exactly the sort of petty, irritating thing humans would do. The other part of her mind, the part that had survived 3 decades of military service before becoming an archaeologist, was screaming warnings. "Doctor," she said slowly, "please tell me you have a rational explanation for this." Dr. Krill's antennae were twitching rapidly now, a sure sign of extreme agitation. "I do not, Captain. However, I feel compelled to point out that human military records from this period contain several references to experimental life extension programs. Most were dismissed as propaganda, but what? But the humans did have a disturbing tendency to make the impossible merely improbable. A new voice cut through the afternoon air, speaking in heavily accented standard hegemony. You found my helmet. Bay. Every member of the archaeological team spun toward the source of the voice, standing at the edge of their camp, as if he had simply materialized from thin air, was a human male. He appeared to be in his 30s, though with humans it was always difficult to tell. His clothing was clearly military issue, but not from any era Vex-9 recognized. The fabric looked almost organic, shifting slightly in the breeze. That is not possible, Vex-9 said, raising her sidearm with practiced ease. You are not possible. The human smiled, and Vex-9 noticed his teeth were slightly too sharp. Yeah, I get that a lot these days. Name is Marcus Vale. I believe you have something of mine. Dr. Krill made a small choking sound, the message device. You are the one who left it. 97 years ago, give or take, Marcus said casually, as if discussing the weather. Time moves differently when you are underground, or maybe it is just the company I have been keeping. Vex-9 kept her weapon trained on him, though she noticed her hands were beginning to shake slightly. Explain. Now. Well, that is a bit complicated, Marcus said, scratching his head. See, dying is not as permanent as most people think, at least, not if you know the right people, or the wrong people, depending on your perspective. He took a step closer, and Vex-9 noticed his shadow was wrong. It moved independently, writhing slightly across the ground like something alive. The war ended badly for us, as you probably know, Marcus continued. Most of my unit got vaporized in the first wave. I got buried under about 20 tons of rubble when your people brought down the command center. Should have died instantly. You did die, Dr. Krill whispered. The casualties reports list you as Kia. Technically correct, Marcus agreed, but death, as it turns out, is more of a career change than an ending, especially when certain parties take an interest in your continued existence. The temperature around the dig site seemed to drop several degrees. Vex-9's breath began to fog, despite the fact that Terra 7's atmosphere was not supposed to support water vapor condensation at these temperatures. What parties? She asked, though she was beginning to suspect she did not want to know the answer. Marcus's smile widened, revealing more of those two sharp teeth. The kind that make deals with desperate soldiers who are not ready to give up the fight. The kind that have been waiting a very long time for someone to find that helmet and follow the breadcrumbs. Behind him, the ground began to shift and bubble. Dark shapes moved beneath the surface, pushing upward with increasing urgency. You see, Captain Vex-9, Marcus said. Somehow, knowing her name though she had never introduced herself, the war never really ended. It just went underground. And now that you have found me, well, he gestured to the churning earth behind him. Now we can finally finish what we started. Afon Bandenlau. The first of the shapes broke through the surface, and Vex-9 realized with growing horror that it was another human, or something that had once been human. Its eyes glowed with the same unnatural light she now noticed in Marcus's gaze. Welcome to the real Terra 7, Marcus said cheerfully. Population, considerably higher than your reports indicated. Vex-9's finger tightened on her weapon's trigger, but she found herself frozen in place, not by fear, though there was plenty of that, but by the sudden understanding that she and her team had stumbled into something far beyond their comprehension. What do you want? She managed to ask. Marcus tilted his head, considering the question. Want? That is simple, Captain. We want off this rock. We want to see the galaxy again. We want to visit old friends. More shapes were emerging from the ground now, dozens of them. All wearing the same organic-looking uniforms, all with the same predatory smiles. And thanks to you finding my helmet, Marcus said, gesturing to the device still clutched in Vex-9's shaking hands, we now have a way to do exactly that. He pointed to their shuttle, sitting innocently on the landing pad 100 meters away. Nice ship, by the way. Hegemony military transport, if I am not mistaken, should have more than enough range to reach the nearest inhabited system. Dr. Krill made another choking sound. The nearest inhabited system is Koros Prime, a population 12 billion. 12 billion, Marcus repeated with obvious satisfaction. That should be enough to get started. Vex-9 realized with dawning terror that whatever these things were, they were not simply interested in escape. They were interested in something much worse. Started with what? She whispered. Marcus's smile became something that belonged in nightmares. The next phase of the war, of course. Humanity may have lost the first round, Captain, but we have had nearly a century to evolve our tactics. The last thing Vex-9 saw before the darkness claimed her was Marcus Vale reaching for her helmet, his fingers moving with inhuman speed. "Thank you for finding me," he said as her consciousness faded. "This is going to be fun." Thighest. Captain Vex-9 awoke to the gentle hum of her own ship's engines, which was concerning for several reasons. First, she distinctly remembered being unconscious on the surface of Terra 7. Second, her ship should not be moving without her direct authorization. Third, and most disturbingly, she could hear humming. Human humming. "Ah, you are awake," came Marcus Vale's cheerful voice from somewhere above her. Perfect timing. "We are just approaching the outer sensor grid of Koros Prime." Vex-9 tried to move and discovered she was secured to her own command chair with what appeared to be standard hegemony restraints. The irony was not lost on her. She craned her neck to see Marcus sitting casually at her navigation console, feet propped up like he owned the place. "How long was I unconscious?" she asked, surprised by how calm her own voice sounded. "About 6 hours," Marcus replied, not bothering to look up from the sensor display. "Just long enough for us to get everyone aboard and plot a course. Your crew has been most cooperative, by the way. My crew would never." "Oh, they are fine," Marcus interrupted. "Well, mostly fine. Dr. Krill is having a fascinating conversation with some of my people about hegemony military protocols. Turns out your species has excellent memory retention under the right circumstances." The bridge doors hissed open, and Dr. Krill walked in. At least it looked like Dr. Krill. Same 4 arms, same antennae, same general body structure. But his eyes held that same unnatural glow she had seen in Marcus, and when he spoke, his voice carried an odd harmonic undertone. "Captain," he said pleasantly, "I have been explaining to our new friends how hegemony identification protocols work. Fascinating stuff, really. Did you know that with the proper codes, a single military transport can land on any hegemony world without question?" Vex-9 felt her blood turn to ice water. "Krill, what have you done?" "Nothing irreversible," Marcus said, finally turning to face her. "Yet, your good doctor simply helped us understand how to blend in. Turns out, when you have been dead for nearly a century, you pick up some interesting new skills. Shape-shifting, for instance." As if to demonstrate, Marcus's face rippled slightly. For a moment, Vex-9 could swear she saw something else underneath, something with too many teeth and eyes that reflected light like a nocturnal predator. "What are you?" she whispered. "Excellent question," Marcus said, his face settling back into its human appearance. "Short answer? We are what happens when humans refuse to stay dead. Long answer is considerably more complicated and involves some very old contracts with some very patient entities." The main view screen flickered to life, showing the blue-green marble of Koros Prime growing larger by the minute. Vex-9 had visited the planet many times during her military career. 12 billion souls, mostly civilian, protected by a defense grid that could vaporize entire fleets. "The defense grid will destroy us the moment we deviate from approved flight paths," she said desperately. "Will it?" Marcus asked with mock surprise. "Dr. Krill, would you care to explain our current status?" The thing wearing Dr. Krill's face smiled, Medical emergency transport, Captain. Requesting immediate clearance for priority landing at Koros Medical Complex. We have several critical patients aboard requiring immediate attention. They will scan the ship, Vex-9 protested. They will see. They will see exactly what we want them to see, Marcus said gently. That is another one of those new skills I mentioned. Reality is much more flexible than most people realize. As if summoned by his words, the communication system crackled to life. Hegemony Transport 77 Alpha. This is Koros Control. We show you on approach vector with medical emergency. You are cleared for immediate landing at Bay 12. Medical teams are standing by. Marcus grinned at Vex-9. See? Perfectly legitimate. This is madness, she said. Even if you reach the surface, you are just 200 humans against an entire planet. The mathematics are impossible. 200 and counting. Marcus corrected, but you are right about the mathematics. Traditional warfare is indeed impractical at these odds. He gestured to the view screen, where Koros Prime continued to grow larger. Fortunately, we are not planning traditional warfare. Through the bridge windows, Vex-9 could see other figures moving through her ship's corridors. They looked human at first glance, but there was something wrong with the way they moved. Too fluid, too coordinated, like parts of a single organism rather than individual beings. What we learned during our extended stay underground, Marcus continued conversationally, is that humanity's greatest weakness was always thinking too small. We focused on individual survival, individual victory, individual achievement. He stood up and walked over to her chair, leaning down until his face was inches from hers. But death teaches you to think bigger. Much bigger. Much bigger. The ship shuddered slightly as it entered Koros Prime's atmosphere. Through the view screen, Vex-9 could see the sprawling cityscape of the capital rushing up to meet them. Millions of lives, going about their daily routines, completely unaware of what was descending from the sky. You cannot possibly convert an entire planet, she said, though her voice lacked conviction. Convert? Marcus laughed, and the sound made Vex-9's mandibles ache. Who said anything about conversion? We are not missionaries, Captain. We are something much more efficient. The ship touched down with barely a tremor. Through the view screen, Vex-9 could see hegemony medical personnel rushing toward the landing bay, emergency equipment in hand. Good people, rushing to help what they believed were injured colleagues. You see, Marcus said, watching the approaching medics with obvious satisfaction, the beautiful thing about shape-shifting is that it is not just about appearance. We can become anyone, assume any identity, access any system, and once we are inside. He made a spreading gesture with his hands. Well, let us just say that hegemony society is about to become much more interesting. The cargo bay doors opened with a soft hiss. Vex-9 watched in horror as her former crew members began disembarking, still wearing their familiar faces but moving with that same unsettling coordination. To the waiting medical teams, they would appear to be legitimate hegemony personnel in need of assistance. Stop, she whispered. Please. These people have done nothing to deserve this. Marcus paused at the bridge door and looked back at her with something that might have been genuine regret. You are right, of course. They do not deserve this. But then again, neither did we. Neither did the billions of humans your people vaporized during the war. Neither did the children in the evacuation centers, or the families hiding in the bunkers. His expression hardened. But the wonderful thing about being dead, Captain, is that you stop caring about what people deserve. You start caring about what they can provide. He gestured toward the view screen, where the first of the medical teams had reached the ship. And right now, they can provide us with access to the entire hegemony communication network, defense grid, and population database. Vex-9 watched as one of her former crew members shook hands with a hegemony medic. The contact lasted perhaps 3 seconds. When they separated, the medic's eyes held that same unnatural glow. How? She breathed. Touch, Marcus said simply. That is all it takes now. A handshake, a pat on the shoulder, helping someone to their feet, basic social contact. And then they become part of us, and we become part of them. More medical personnel were arriving now, along with security teams and administrative staff. Each contact, each helpful gesture, each moment of basic hegemony courtesy was spreading the infection further. Within an hour, Marcus continued, we will have access to every major system on this planet. Within a day, we will have spread to the orbital stations. Within a week. He smiled that predatory smile again. Within a week, we will have the entire Koros system. And from there, well, the galaxy is really quite small when you think about it. Vex-9 slumped in her restraints, watching her worst nightmare unfold on the view screen. The hegemony's own protocols, their own kindness and efficiency, were being turned into weapons against them. Why are you telling me this? She asked weakly. Because someone needs to witness, Marcus said. Someone needs to understand what happened here, and why. History is important, Captain. Even the history of endings. He produced a small recording device from his pocket and set it on her console. This will record everything. When this is over, when the galaxy belongs to us, we will make sure the truth is preserved. Future generations should know that humanity did not simply vanish from the universe. He paused at the door. They should know that we came back. As the bridge doors closed behind him, Vex-9 was left alone with the recording device and the view screen showing the systematic infection of an entire world. In the distance, she could see communication towers beginning to pulse with strange lights and transport ships lifting off toward the orbital platforms. The war, it seemed, was far from over. It had simply evolved. And as she watched Marcus Vale's impossible army spread across Koros Prime like a virus made of nightmares and determination, Captain Vex-9 realized that perhaps the most terrifying thing about humans was not their capacity for violence or their stubborn refusal to surrender. It was their ability to turn even death itself into just another tactical advantage. The recording device beeped softly, documenting the end of one era and the beginning of something else entirely. Something that would make the original war look like a minor disagreement between neighbors. Outside, 12 billion voices began to sing in perfect harmony, welcoming their new purpose with inhuman joy. The galaxy would never be the same.